Nietzsche critiqued Darwin's theory of evolution for overemphasizing survival as the primary driver of evolution. Nietzsche believed that the will to power was the primary instinct of life, and that it was only when weakened or distressed that an organism falls back on the instinct of survival. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche wrote, "In nature, it is not distress which rules, but rather abundance, squandering, even to the point of absurdity. The struggle for survival is only an exception, a temporary restriction of the will to life." For Nietzsche, the primary aim of life was not survival, but the accumulation of power, of strength, of resources, the drive to master one's environment, and perhaps most importantly, the desire to discharge one's energy and strength into the world. It is only when life is severely weakened, sick, injured, distressed, that it falls into a state of mere survival and loses the drive, the ability, the strength to overcome itself through the accumulation of power. Nietzsche's point can be illustrated by looking at captive life. Zoos provide all the conditions for comfortable survival, but in them, animals become agitated and restless, and even die of depression because they are unable to fill their will to life by discharging their powers and seeking out new territories to master. Only broken and castrated life submits happily to captivity. Nietzsche also critiqued the idea that evolution always leads to the improvement of a species, and that nature selects the fittest, in other words, the healthiest and strongest specimens of a species. He wrote, "Species do not grow more perfect. The weaker dominate the strong, again and again. The reason being that they are the great majority, and they are also cleverer. The strong are always fewer than the weak, and the resources required for their survival greater. The most powerful, magnificent creatures of history are more likely to have gone extinct because although they are strong, the consumption and expenditure of energy required for their existence is immense. The great beasts of prey of our time face extinction, while rodents, insects, and microorganisms would remain on the earth even in the event of a mass extinction, such as the one which is supposed to have killed off the dinosaurs. The simplest and least complex forms of life are the fittest for survival. But Nietzsche argues that the primary instinct of life is not survival, it is the will to power. This correction of Darwin's theory of evolution, or at least the way in which it was commonly viewed in Nietzsche's time, makes it hard to speak of nature as the guiding force behind evolution. I once heard Jordan Peterson say that the best definition of nature is that which selects, referring to natural selection, of course. But this kind of language makes nature appear as some sort of divine force, akin to God, guiding evolution. Nietzsche, instead, viewed nature, as it is commonly used, as a mostly useless term because it is too general. Instead, he identified two primary forces within nature, the will to power and the spirit of gravity. The spirit of gravity is not only entropy, death, and decay. It is also the tendency of life to move towards homogenization, the survival and proliferation of small, undifferentiated life forms, like prokaryotes, because of their ability to survive in diverse and harsh conditions. But there is also an impulse within life which seeks to defy the spirit of gravity, a drive towards mastery, differentiation, power. The more of this spirit a life form has, the more alive it seems to us. Hence why plants seem less alive to us than animals, and clams and insects seem less alive to us than humans. Nietzsche believed that, when surveying the trends of history, instances of life breaking free from the spirit of gravity were rare. He wrote, "What surprises me today most when surveying the great destinies of man is always seeing before me the opposite of what Darwin and his school see, or want to see today. Selection in favor of the stronger, in favor of those who have come off better, the progress of the species. The very opposite is quite palpably the case." Nietzsche rejected the moral view of the world which arose from Christianity, saying that there is no objective good and evil, only strong and weak wills. For Nietzsche, morality in the absolute sense, that is, opposed to the classical conception of virtue, arose first in weakened life forms as a last resort at the preservation of life. Nietzsche wrote, "I assess the power of a will by how much resistance, pain, torture it endures and knows how to turn to its advantage. The healthy will, the strong will, can endure much hardship and pain and still embrace life, while the sick, weakened will shrinks from challenge and pain and seeks to find comfort in another world. Thus, the sick will must invent morality as an escape from the world and an attempt to gain mastery over it from a position of weakness." Nietzsche pointed out that absolute morality allies itself with the spirit of gravity because it seeks to restrict life and must necessarily find life, which is the amoral will to power, in the wrong. It must necessarily judge life to be evil, since life needs evil, that is death, suffering, consumption, etc., to continue. This philosophy can be seen in traditional interpretations of Genesis, in which death, suffering, and evil are seen as a result of man's sin and the cause of his expulsion from the paradise which he was born into. Thus, a morality is established which rejects the world for the better world of heaven or paradise, which is supposed to have existed before Eve's great mistake brought perfection into God's perfect creation. At the center of this worldview is a will to nothingness, a deep-rooted nihilism, a desire to escape the world, to escape life, which is imperfect and amoral. In contrast, the Prometheus myth describes human life as beginning in a state of brokenness, in which man lives in the mud like beasts. Prometheus' gift of knowledge, in the form of fire, is not a curse upon man, but a blessing. With it, man is able to learn the arts of agriculture and civilization, and thus elevate himself above the beasts. The worldview implicit in this story embraces the will to power and to life, symbolized by Prometheus. The story says that man's existence is, by default, filthy and wretched, but that we can elevate ourselves above this state by taking bold and daring action in the world. This is the classical idea of virtue, which in Latin is etymologically connected to vis, meaning life, and vir, meaning man. The classical conception of virtue is found in the ideas of vitality and strength, in taking bold and manly action in the world and thereby bringing power and honor to oneself. The Greeks embraced the will to power and vitality and worshipped the image of the strong, beautiful, youthful body as the highest expression of life. For the Greeks, all that elevated and strengthened man, all that brought him closer to the terrible power of the gods, was good, while all that weakened man and made him sick was evil. They recognized that the instincts of higher life must be preserved, cultivated, and strengthened, that they had to struggle against the spirit of gravity which pulls man back towards a filthy, animal life of mere existence. For the Greek hero, a life of domestic peace was hateful. Only in struggle could his highest potential be fulfilled. Only by engaging with the world through manly action and striving to make himself strong, beautiful, and powerful could he overcome the spirit of gravity which rules by default. By striving towards the heights of Olympus and daring to steal fire from the gods, Prometheus sanctified the suffering inherent in creation. Prometheus said yes to life and welcomed Zeus's eagle with a glad heart and a defiant brow. Like Prometheus, we too must struggle against the state of mere survival which prevails in modernity, against the spirit of gravity which pulls us down towards a homogenized, broken existence. We too must learn to strive for the heights.